Chance encounter. Olivia Reed checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The presentation had run late and now she was rushing to catch the last train home. As the sustainability director at EcoFuture, a small but passionate environmental nonprofit, she had spent months preparing for this meeting with potential donors. The results had been promising but exhausting. The Meridian Tower loomed above her, its gleaming glass facade reflecting the amber glow of sunset. This was the headquarters of Vulcan Industries, one of the largest energy conglomerates in the country. She had spent years criticizing their environmental policies, yet here she was, having just finished a presentation in their conference room. As she hurried across the marble lobby, her phone buzzed with a weather alert. A severe storm was approaching the city. Perfect timing. She quickened her pace toward the executive elevator bank, which would take her directly to the parking level. Just as the doors began to close, a hand reached out to stop them. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped inside. Olivia immediately recognized him. Julian Blackwood, CEO of Vulcan Industries and one of the most controversial figures in the energy sector. His company had been in her crosshairs for years, though they had never actually met. He nodded politely but didn't speak, his attention fixed on his phone. Olivia pressed herself against the opposite wall, suddenly aware of her rumpled blazer and sensible shoes beside his evident perfection. The elevator had just passed the 30th floor, when a deafening crack of thunder shook the building. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged them into darkness. A moment later, emergency lights cast a dim glow as the elevator jerked to a halt. "What the hell?" Julian muttered, immediately pressing the emergency call button. No response. He tried his phone. No signal. Olivia checked hers as well. Same here. Julian pressed the button again, more forcefully this time. "This is Julian Blackwood. Get this elevator moving immediately." The silence that followed seemed to mock his command. For perhaps the first time in decades, Julian Blackwood's orders weren't being obeyed. "The storm must have knocked out power to the building," Olivia said, trying to remain calm. "The backup generators should kick in soon." Julian loosened his tie slightly. "They should have already." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Olivia found herself studying his profile in the dim light. His face was more lined than it appeared in the business magazines, evidence of his 53 years and the pressure of running a global corporation. There was a hardness to his jaw, a coldness in his gray eyes that matched his reputation. "You're Olivia Reed," he said suddenly, breaking the silence. "From EcoFuture." Surprised, she nodded. "I didn't think you'd know who I am." A thin smile crossed his face. "I make it my business to know who's trying to dismantle mine. Your organization has been quite persistent." "We're persistent because the issues are urgent," she replied, her professional instincts kicking in despite their predicament. "The environmental impact assessments for your Arctic drilling project are fully compliant with all regulations," he finished smoothly. "But perhaps this isn't the time for that debate." Another silence fell, heavier this time. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Olivia checked her watch again. Nearly 30 minutes had passed. "Do you have somewhere to be?" Julian asked, noticing her gesture. "The last train home, but I've missed it by now." She sighed, leaning against the wall. "My daughter is with a sitter." Something in his expression shifted slightly. "How old?" 8. Her name is Penny." Julian nodded, then pressed the emergency button again. Still nothing. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the temperature in the elevator began to rise. Julian removed his suit jacket, carefully folding it before setting it down. Olivia noticed a small photograph that fell from the pocket. He quickly retrieved it, but not before she glimpsed the image of a young woman. "Your daughter?" she asked, surprising herself with the personal question. His expression darkened. "My sister. She passed away last year." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. "It was unexpected," he replied, his voice suddenly less certain than before. He tucked the photo away, then added, "The company was building a new clean energy division. It was her project." Olivia studied him with new interest. This didn't align with what she knew about Vulcan's policies. Before she could ask more, the elevator shuddered violently, making them both grab for the handrails. "That didn't sound good," she whispered. For the first time, a flicker of genuine concern crossed Julian's face. "No," he agreed. "It didn't." Beneath the surface, 2 hours had passed since the elevator ground to a halt. The emergency lights cast long shadows across Julian's face as he paced the small space, his earlier composure beginning to fray at the edges. Olivia sat on the floor, her back against the wall, watching him. "They must know we're here," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "A CEO doesn't just disappear without people looking." Julian stopped pacing and ran a hand through his usually perfect hair. "My assistant left early because of the storm. I told everyone I was working late alone." He checked his watch. "No meetings until morning. What about security?" "Skeleton crew during the storm. And this elevator bank is private." He sighed heavily. "Ironic, isn't it? All those precautions for privacy might now delay someone finding us." Olivia nodded, then winced as she shifted position. Her leg had fallen asleep from sitting too long in one position. "Are you all right?" Julian asked, noticing her discomfort. "Just pins and needles." She stood up, stamping her foot gently to restore circulation. "I'm fine." Julian loosened his tie further and unbuttoned his collar. The temperature continued to rise as the ventilation system remained offline. Beads of sweat had formed on his forehead. "You should sit down," Olivia suggested. "Conserve energy." To her surprise, he complied, lowering himself to the floor across from her. Up close, without the barrier of a conference table or the theater of a press conference, he looked different. More human somehow. "So," he said after a moment, "you have an 8-year-old daughter." Olivia nodded. "Penny, she's with my neighbor, Mrs. Goldstein. She'll be worried by now." "Her father?" "Not in the picture." Olivia didn't elaborate. The wounds from David's departure 3 years ago had healed, but she preferred not to reopen them. Julian seemed to understand. He nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flask. Catching her raised eyebrow, he smiled slightly. "Water, I always carry it. Habit from my climbing days." "You climb mountains?" The image of the buttoned-up CEO scaling rock faces didn't compute. "Used to. Everest, K2, Denali." He unscrewed the cap and offered her the flask. "Haven't had time in years." Olivia accepted it gratefully, taking a small sip before returning it. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange. "Thank you." "You seem surprised that I have hobbies," he observed. "I'm surprised they're not yacht racing or polo," she admitted. He laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "I leave those to the trust fund kids. I grew up poor in Appalachia. Coal country." Now Olivia was truly surprised. Julian Blackwood's biography was well known in business circles. Harvard Business School, meteoric rise through the ranks at Volton, ruthless acquisition strategies that had made him both feared and admired. But this detail wasn't in any profile she'd read. "My father was a miner," he continued, rolling up his sleeves to reveal forearms still marked with the lean muscle of a climber. "Black lung took him when I was 12. "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. "That must have been difficult." It was. His voice had grown quieter. "My sister and I were raised by our mother after that. She worked 3 jobs to put me through college." The revelation hung between them. Julian Blackwood, whose company owned 3 coal plants that Olivia's organization had protested, was the son of a coal miner who died from the industry's hazards. "That's why Rebecca, my sister, was so passionate about the clean energy division," he said, surprising Olivia again with this voluntary information. She never forgot where we came from. "What happened to the project after she passed?" Olivia asked carefully. Julian's expression hardened slightly. "The board voted to scale it back. Profit margins weren't promising enough in the short term." "And you agreed?" He looked away. "I'm the CEO. The decision is ultimately mine." Something in his tone made Olivia think there was more to the story. But before she could press further, the elevator lurched again, more violently this time. The lights flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought they might plummet. Instead, the elevator stabilized, but at a more precarious angle than before. Julian was instantly on his feet, reaching out to steady her. His hand gripped her arm firmly, the unexpected contact sending an odd current through her. For a moment, they stood close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something subtle and earthy, not the overpowering scent she would have expected. "Thank you," she murmured, stepping back slightly. He nodded, releasing her arm but remaining close. "I think a cable might have snapped." The implication hung heavy in the air. If the remaining cables failed, they would drop 30 floors. "We should sit," Olivia suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "Distribute our weight evenly." They settled on the floor again, this time both with their backs against the same wall. The proximity was unavoidable in the small space. "Tell me about your daughter," Julian said suddenly. "What's she like?" Olivia recognized the question for what it was, an attempt to distract them both from their increasingly dangerous situation. She appreciated the gesture. "Penny is brilliant, curious about everything. She collects rocks and knows all their scientific names." Olivia smiled, thinking of her daughter's serious face as she arranged her specimens. "She wants to be a geologist when she grows up." "Smart girl," Julian commented. "The world needs more scientists." "What about you?" Olivia asked. "Any children?" A shadow crossed his face. "No, my work became my life. Rebecca used to tell me I'd regret that someday." He paused. "I think she was right." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did Olivia. Julian Blackwood, notorious for his unapologetic pursuit of profit and power, acknowledging regret. The man sitting beside her was increasingly difficult to reconcile with the corporate villain she had imagined him to be. "It's never too late to change course," she offered. He glanced at her, a mixture of skepticism and something else, perhaps hope, in his eyes. "Some ships are too large to turn quickly. But they can still turn," she countered. Before he could respond, the elevator shifted again and the emergency lights dimmed momentarily. In the darkness, Olivia felt Julian's hand find hers, gripping it tightly. When the lights returned, neither of them immediately let go. Shifting perspectives, the temperature in the elevator had become uncomfortable as the third hour of their confinement began. Olivia had removed her blazer, leaving her in a simple blouse. Julian, his crisp white shirt now wrinkled and partially unbuttoned, sat beside her in companionable silence. Their earlier tension had given way to something more complex. Not quite friendship, but a strange intimacy born of shared danger. "Do you think anyone's looking for us yet?" Olivia asked, breaking the silence. Julian checked his watch. "It's past midnight. Security does rounds every 3 hours. Someone should notice the elevator soon. Unless the entire building is affected by the power outage." He nodded grimly. "There's that possibility." Olivia shifted, trying to find a more comfortable position. Her thoughts drifted to Penny. Mrs. Goldstein would have called her emergency contacts by now. Her sister Diane would probably have gone to pick up Penny. The thought brought some relief. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked, noticing her expression change. "My sister probably has Penny by now. She lives nearby." Olivia smiled faintly. "Diane's good in a crisis. Like you," Julian observed. Olivia glanced at him, surprised. "What makes you say that? Most people would be panicking by now." "You're remarkably calm." She shrugged. "Single motherhood is good training for emergencies. When Penny broke her arm last year, I had to keep it together while driving to the hospital with her screaming in pain." Julian winced sympathetically. "That sounds difficult." "It was." She paused, then added, "But what about you? You're the one who's supposed to be unreachable. Yet here you are, trapped in an elevator with an environmental activist who's criticized your company for years." A wry smile crossed his face. "Perhaps the universe has a sense of humor." "Or justice," she countered, though her tone held no malice. "Touché." He sighed, leaning his head back against the wall. "Though if you knew the full picture, you might see things differently." Something in his voice caught her attention. "What do you mean?" Julian was quiet for a long moment, as if debating whether to continue. Finally he said, "Rebecca's clean energy division wasn't just her pet project. It was meant to be the future of Volton. Then why scale it back after her death?" His jaw tightened. "Politics." The board saw an opportunity with her gone. "They never shared her vision, our vision." Olivia turned to face him more directly. "Your vision? I thought you were aligned with the board." "It's complicated." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of frustration. "When I took over as CEO 15 years ago, Volton was already deeply invested in fossil fuels. Change doesn't happen overnight in a company this size." "But you could have pushed harder," Olivia challenged. "Could I?" His gray eyes met hers directly. "The board has significant power. Major shareholders have expectations. Thousands of jobs depend on our current operations. And millions of lives depend on addressing climate change," she countered. Instead of becoming defensive as she expected, Julian nodded. "You're right. That's what Rebecca always said." A faint smile touched his lips. You would have liked her. She was just as passionate as you are. The comparison seemed to surprise them both. Julian looked away first, reaching for his water flask and taking a small sip before offering it to Olivia again. As she accepted it, their fingers brushed once more, lingering slightly longer than necessary. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through her that had nothing to do with the rising temperature in the elevator. "Tell me about the project," she said, redirecting her thoughts. "What was your sister trying to accomplish?" Julian's face brightened subtly as he spoke. Rebecca envisioned a complete transformation of Volton over the next decade. Solar fields in the southwest, wind farms off the Atlantic coast, advanced battery storage facilities. His hands moved animatedly as he described the plans. "We were developing a new type of flexible solar panel that could be integrated into existing structures, buildings, roads, even clothing." "That sounds revolutionary," Olivia admitted, genuinely impressed. "It was." Pride colored his voice. "Rebecca assembled a team of the best engineers and scientists in the field. We were making real progress." "What happened after she died?" His expression darkened. "The board claimed the costs were too high, the return on investment too slow. They voted to reduce funding by 80%. And you let them." It wasn't a question, but Julian answered anyway. "I fought it. But ultimately, yes. I compromised." He looked down at his hands. "I've been trying to preserve what I can of her work while navigating the political realities." Olivia studied him, seeing the conflict written in the lines of his face. The Julian Blackwood she thought she knew, the heartless corporate tyrant who put profits above all else, was at odds with the man sitting beside her, grieving his sister and her vision. "Why not go public?" she asked. "Use your platform to build support for her project." He laughed humorlessly. "And risk the board removing me? Then what happens to the project?" "You could start something new. With your resources and connections, it's not that simple." He cut her off, then immediately softened his tone. "I'm sorry. It's just, Volton was our father's dream before it was ours. He watched the mining company he worked for destroy his community and his health. He wanted to build something better." Olivia hadn't known this part of the company's history. "Volton was founded by your father?" Julian nodded. "After he got sick, he used his settlement money to start a small energy consulting firm. He died before it became successful, but he laid the foundation. Rebecca and I built it into what it is today." His voice grew quieter. "Leaving would feel like abandoning his legacy, and hers." The revelation shifted something fundamental in Olivia's understanding. The company she had vilified for years had been born from the same pain and injustice she fought against. "I didn't know," she admitted softly. "Few people do. It doesn't fit the corporate narrative." His smile was tinged with sadness. "Easier for everyone if I'm just the ruthless CEO who cares only about the bottom line." "Is that why you maintain that image? To protect the company?" He considered her question. "Partly. And partly because it's easier to make the hard decisions when people already expect the worst from you." The elevator shifted again, more subtly this time. They both tensed, but nothing more happened. The momentary fear drew them physically closer, their shoulders now touching as they sat side by side. "For what it's worth," Olivia said after a moment, "I think your sister would be proud that you're still fighting for her vision, even if the progress is slower than she hoped." Julian turned to look at her, genuine surprise in his eyes. "That's not what I expected you to say." "What did you expect?" "A lecture about corporate responsibility and moral courage." His tone was lighter now, almost teasing. She smiled. "I save those for my presentations. This feels more like a conversation between people, not positions." Something changed in his expression then, a softening around the eyes, a vulnerability she wouldn't have believed possible in Julian Blackwood just hours ago. "Thank you for that," he said quietly. "It's been a long time since anyone has seen me as just a person." The confession hung in the air between them, altering the atmosphere in the small space. Olivia became acutely aware of his proximity, of the slight rise and fall of his chest as he breathed, of the unexpected gentleness in his eyes. Before either could speak again, the elevator lights flickered more dramatically than before, plunging them into complete darkness for several seconds. When the emergency lights returned, dimmer now as their battery power waned, Julian's arm was around her shoulders, protective and warm. Neither mentioned it, neither moved away. The revelation. The darkness in the elevator had grown more persistent as the emergency lights continued to fade. It was now approaching 4 in the morning, and exhaustion had begun to wear on them both. Olivia's head rested lightly against Julian's shoulder, a position that would have seemed unthinkable mere hours ago but now felt strangely natural. "Tell me something no one knows about you," Julian said softly, his voice cutting through the quiet darkness. Olivia considered the question. "I almost didn't start EcoFuture." "Really? Why not?" She shifted slightly but didn't move away from him. "After Penny was born and David left, I was offered a corporate position at Green Tech Industries. The salary was 3 times what I make now with benefits, childcare assistance, everything a single mother could want." "What stopped you?" "The night before I was supposed to sign the contract, there was a chemical spill at their Texas facility. It affected a primarily low-income neighborhood." She paused, remembering. The company's response was to deploy their PR team rather than address the actual damage. "I realized I couldn't be part of that system." Julian was quiet for a moment. "That took courage." "Or foolishness," she said with a small laugh.
"There have been months when I couldn't pay the heating bill. But you stayed true to your principles," he observed.
"That's rare. What about you?" she asked. "Tell me something no one knows about Julian Blackwood." He drew a deep breath. "I've been developing an exit strategy." The statement hung in the air, its significance slowly dawning on Olivia. "From Volton?" "Yes." His voice was barely above a whisper. "For the past 6 months, I've been secretly acquiring patents and assembling a team for a new venture, focused exclusively on clean energy." Olivia lifted her head to look at him, though his features were difficult to discern in the dim light. "You're leaving your father's company?" "Transforming it," he corrected. "I've been quietly buying back shares, strengthening my position. In 3 weeks at the annual shareholders meeting, I'm going to announce a complete restructuring of Volton's operations. The board will fight you," she pointed out. "They'll try, but I'll have controlling interest by then." There was a steely determination in his voice that she recognized, the same quality that had made him such a formidable opponent all these years. "Why tell me this? It could derail your plans if it leaked." Julian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, become more vulnerable. "Because being trapped in here with you has made me question everything I thought I knew about myself." He shifted to face her more directly. "You've spent years fighting against what Volton represents, yet you've shown me more genuine understanding tonight than people I've known for decades." The confession caught Olivia off guard. "I could say the same about you," she admitted. "You're not who I thought you were. Who did you think I was? A corporate robot, someone who had sacrificed his humanity for power." She smiled faintly. "I was wrong." He reached out in the darkness, his hand finding hers. "I've made compromises I'm not proud of, decisions that kept me awake at night, but everything I've done has been building to this moment, when I can finally fulfill the promise I made to Rebecca before she died." "What promise was that?" Julian's grip on her hand tightened slightly. "She made me swear that I would finish what we started, that I wouldn't let Volton remain part of the problem." His voice grew thick with emotion. "She was diagnosed with lymphoma, linked to chemical exposure from one of our early facilities. The same chemicals we continued to use because replacing them was deemed too expensive." The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. "Your sister died because of Volton's practices?" "Yes." The word seemed to drain him. "The company we built to honor our father ended up killing her." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Olivia didn't know what to say. The grief in his voice was raw, genuine, and it transformed her understanding of him completely. This wasn't a man who lacked compassion or conscience. This was someone carrying a burden of guilt and responsibility so immense she could hardly comprehend it. "Is that why you carry her photograph?" she asked gently. "To remind me of what's at stake." Julian released her hand to reach into his pocket, withdrawing the small photo she had glimpsed earlier. Though it was too dark to see clearly now, he held it carefully, like something precious. "Every time I've had to compromise to delay the changes we need to make, I look at her face and promise her it's just temporary." The elevator creaked ominously, the metal groaning as if under increasing strain. They both tensed, instinctively moving closer together. "If we don't make it out of here," Julian said quietly once the noise had subsided, "there's a file in my home safe. The combination is Rebecca's birthday. April 12, 1978. It contains everything needed to continue with the plan. My attorney knows to release it if anything happens to me. Don't talk like that, Olivia said firmly. We're going to get out of here. I hope so. But I need someone to know. Someone who understands what's at stake. His hand found hers again in the darkness. Someone I trust. The word hung between them. Trust. After years of being on opposite sides, after just hours of truly knowing each other, he was entrusting her with his life's work, his sister's legacy. Why me? She asked, her voice barely audible. Because you fight for what you believe in no matter the cost. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. Because you see the person behind the position. The air between them seemed to change, charged with something new and unexpected. Olivia became acutely aware of his proximity, of the warmth of his hand on hers, of his breath soft against her face. Julian, she began, unsure what she wanted to say. Before she could continue, he leaned forward slightly, his forehead resting against hers. I never expected this, he whispered. To find understanding in the last place I would have looked. The intimacy of the gesture, the vulnerability in his voice, stirred something deep within her. For a moment, all the labels fell away, environmentalist, CEO, adversaries, leaving just two people connecting in the darkness. Slowly, hesitantly, Julian's hand moved to her cheek, his touch gentle as if asking a question. Olivia answered by closing the small distance between them, her lips finding his in the darkness. The kiss was tender, uncertain, a bridge being built between two worlds that had seemed irreconcilable just hours before. When they separated, Julian's hand remained on her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw as if memorizing her features by touch. If we get out of here, he said softly, everything changes. Yes, she agreed, understanding he meant more than just Volton's future. Everything changes. As if in response to their words, the elevator suddenly jerked violently, dropping several inches before catching again. Olivia gasped, clutching Julian's arm. The emergency lights flickered wildly, then stabilized at an even dimmer glow. That didn't sound good, Julian said, his arm tightening protectively around her. No, she whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. It didn't. They sat in tense silence, waiting for the next movement, the next sound that might signal either their rescue or their doom. In the quiet darkness, Julian's hand found hers once more, their fingers intertwining. Whatever happens, he said softly, I'm glad it was you I was trapped with. Olivia Reed. She squeezed his hand in response, finding strange comfort in this connection that had bloomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. So am I. Just as the words left her lips, a new sound reached them. Not the ominous creaking of strained cables, but the distant echo of voices and the mechanical whir of equipment. Someone was coming. Hope flared between them, bright as dawn breaking after the longest night. Beyond the locked doors, sunrise painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink as emergency workers finally pried open the elevator doors. After nearly 7 hours trapped between floors, Olivia and Julian emerged, disheveled and exhausted but safe. The rescue team had worked through the night, battling the storm's aftermath to reach them. Ms. Reed, your sister's been contacted, a paramedic informed Olivia as she sat on the edge of an ambulance, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders. She's bringing your daughter to meet you at the hospital for a checkup. Olivia nodded gratefully, watching as Julian spoke with the building's security team several yards away. In the morning light, he had reassumed his role as CEO, back straight, voice authoritative, every inch the commanding figure that the world recognized. Yet she could still see traces of the man she'd come to know during those hours in the darkness, in the gentleness of his eyes when they met hers, in the way his hand had lingered on her arm as they were separated by the rescue workers. Just precautionary, the paramedic was saying about the hospital visit. You both seem to be in good condition, all things considered. Julian approached then, having finished with security. My driver is waiting, he told Olivia.
He can take you to the hospital. Thank you, she replied.
Suddenly uncertain how to navigate this new reality, where they were neither adversaries nor intimate strangers, but something undefined in between. The ride to the hospital passed in relative silence, both of them processing the night's events in the harsh clarity of daylight. Julian's hand rested on the seat between them, occasionally brushing against hers, deliberate moments of contact that served as reminders that what had happened was real. At the hospital entrance, before the car had fully stopped, Julian turned to her. "Olivia, about last night—" "Julian, please," she interrupted, suddenly afraid of what he might say. That it was a mistake, a moment of vulnerability best forgotten. "We don't have to—" "I meant what I said," he continued firmly. "Everything changes. Starting now." Before she could respond, the car door opened and Diane appeared with Penny in tow. The 8-year-old launched herself at her mother with a cry of relief. "Mom, Mrs. Goldstein said you were trapped. Were you scared? Was it like in the movies?" Penny's questions tumbled out as Olivia held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's shampoo. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." Over Penny's head, Olivia met Julian's gaze. "This is Mr. Blackwood. He was trapped with me." Penny regarded him solemnly. "Did you protect my mom?" A smile softened Julian's features. "Actually, your mother protected me." This answer seemed to satisfy Penny, who nodded as if it made perfect sense. "We should get you checked out," Diane urged, giving Julian a curious glance. She had clearly recognized him and was puzzled by the lack of tension between her sister and the notorious CEO. As Olivia allowed herself to be led away, Julian called after her. "Ms. Reed, I'll be in touch about that proposal we discussed." She understood the veiled message, a promise that their connection wouldn't end here. "I look forward to it, Mr. Blackwood." 3 weeks later, Olivia stood at the back of a packed conference room at Volton headquarters. Journalists from every major news outlet filled the seats, cameras flashing as Julian approached the podium. He looked different today, still imposing in his tailored suit, but there was an openness to his expression that few had seen before. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice confident and clear. "Today marks a new chapter for Volton Industries." As he outlined his vision for the company's transformation, the complete phase-out of fossil fuel operations, the massive investment in clean energy technologies, the partnerships with environmental organizations, whispers rippled through the audience. The stock market would be in chaos by closing bell. The industry would be forever altered. "This isn't just a business decision," Julian continued, his eyes finding Olivia's in the crowd. "It's a moral imperative. My sister, Rebecca Blackwood, began this journey before her untimely death. Today we honor her legacy by completing what she started." He unveiled a rendering of the first project, a solar field that would power 500,000 homes, named the Rebecca Blackwood Clean Energy Initiative. Beside it, a second project appeared on screen, the Reed Foundation for Environmental Justice, dedicated to supporting communities affected by industrial pollution. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. He hadn't told her about this part. After the presentation, as journalists swarmed with questions, Julian made his way through the crowd toward her. "What do you think?" he asked quietly, standing close enough that their hands nearly touched. "It's incredible," she replied honestly. "But the foundation, Julian, you didn't have to do that. It's not charity," he clarified. "It's partnership. The board approved your appointment as executive director if you'll accept." Olivia stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to run the foundation?" "Who better? You understand the issues better than anyone." His expression grew more serious. "This isn't about us, Olivia. It's about the work that needs to be done." She nodded, appreciating his directness. "And what about us?" she asked, the question they'd been circling in their frequent phone calls and occasional dinners over the past 3 weeks. A smile touched his lips. "That's entirely separate, and entirely up to you." Before she could respond, his assistant approached, apologetically informing him that the board members were waiting. Julian nodded, then turned back to Olivia. "Dinner tonight? I'd like Penny to see my rock collection. I hear she's an enthusiast." The thoughtful inclusion of her daughter wasn't lost on Olivia. She'd love that. As Julian walked away, Olivia felt her phone buzz with a text message. It was from him, sent just moments ago. The elevator was the easy part. Changing the world together, that's the real adventure. 6 months later, Olivia stood on the platform at the inaugural ceremony for the Rebecca Blackwood solar field. Beside her, Julian addressed the crowd, his hand occasionally finding the small of her back, a gesture of connection that had become familiar over the months. Penny sat in the front row, proudly wearing her junior environmental scientist badge that Julian had custom made for her. She had taken to him gradually, first interested in his stories about mountain climbing, then fascinated by his knowledge of geology, and finally accepting his presence in their lives with the straightforward adaptation that children often manage better than adults. None of this would have been possible without the vision and determination of two extraordinary women, Julian was saying. My sister Rebecca, who saw what Volton could become, and Olivia Reed, who never stopped fighting for a better world, even when that meant standing against companies like ours. He turned to Olivia, inviting her to join him at the microphone. As she stepped forward, she reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them here. From adversaries to allies to something deeper and more profound. The Reed Foundation had already helped 3 communities affected by industrial pollution secure clean water systems. Volton's transformation had inspired 2 other major energy companies to announce similar initiatives. It wasn't enough, the work had only just begun, but it was progress born from the most unexpected of circumstances. Sometimes, Olivia told the audience, it takes being trapped in the dark to see things clearly. Julian and I learned that sometimes your greatest opponent can become your strongest ally, and that what seems like an ending can actually be a beginning. Her eyes met Julian's, and in his gaze she saw everything they'd been through, the fear and vulnerability of that night in the elevator, the tentative trust that had grown between them, the challenging work of reconciling their different worlds, and the deep respect and affection that had blossomed despite all odds. Later, as they walked together through the rows of gleaming solar panels stretching toward the horizon, Julian took her hand. Penny asked me something interesting yesterday, he said. Oh? Olivia had learned that her daughter's questions often led to profound conversations. She asked if we were stuck in that elevator on purpose. A smile played at his lips. She thinks the universe wanted us to meet properly. Olivia laughed. And what did you tell her? I told her sometimes the universe has to go to extreme measures to get stubborn people to listen. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I told her I'm grateful every day that it did. The setting sun cast long shadows across the solar field, the panels catching the golden light and transforming it, just as that night of darkness had transformed them both. Olivia stood on tiptoe to kiss him, no longer surprised by how right it felt. So am I, she whispered against his lips. So am I. In the distance, Penny waved excitedly, having discovered a particularly interesting rock formation with one of the engineers. Julian and Olivia waved back, their free hands still intertwined. The world would never know exactly what had transpired in those hours of darkness. How 2 people had shed their armor and found the humanity in each other. How a kiss exchanged in fear and hope had laid the foundation for both personal and global transformation. That belonged to them alone. But the results, the Clean Energy Initiative, the Environmental Foundation, the industry-wide changes, those were their gift to the world. Proof that sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin not with grand gestures, but with simple human connection. As they walked toward Penny, Julian squeezed Olivia's hand. Who would have thought, he said softly, that being trapped would set us free? Olivia smiled, leaning into his shoulder as they walked. Sometimes, she replied, the heart isn't made of steel after all. It just needs the right person to remind it.